A millionaire boy finds another boy just like him, living on the streets in dirty and torn clothes. Before we start the story, write in the comments from which part of the world you're watching today. He decides to take him home and introduce him to his mother. "Look, Mom, he's just like me," he says. When she turns around and sees the two of them together, she falls to her knees in tears. "I knew it," she whispers. What she reveals will leave you speechless. "But how is that possible? You're just like me," Manuel exclaims, his voice shaking with amazement as he stares at the boy in front of him. The little millionaire blinked several times, trying to believe what he was seeing. There, just a few steps away, stood a boy who looked exactly like him. They had the same deep blue eyes, the same delicate features, the same golden tint of hair. For a moment, Manuel thought he was standing in front of a mirror, but it was real. In front of him stood a boy, just like him. The boy standing opposite him also looked at him paralyzed, as if he had seen a ghost. The resemblance was absurd, frightening, inexplicable. However, despite the fact that their features were identical, something set them apart. Manuel looked closely at the boy and noticed his dirty and torn clothes, his disheveled hair, and his skin, burnt by the sun, torn by street life. And the smell was different. While the little millionaire exuded the scent of expensive perfume, the boy in front of him smelled strongly of abandonment and daily struggle. For a few minutes, they simply looked at each other, as if time had stopped. Then Manuel carefully took a step forward. The street boy instinctively stepped back, but was stopped by the millionaire's soft voice. "Don't be afraid, I won't hurt you," Manuel said, trying to inspire confidence. The homeless boy was silent for a while. His eyes expressed distrust. Manuel asked with curiosity and kindness, "What is your name?" There was no answer for a few seconds until finally the boy said in a hoarse, quiet voice, "Pablo, my name is Pablo." A dazzling smile lit up Manuel's face. He extended his hand, a gesture that conveyed rare sincerity. "I'm Manuel. Very pleased to meet you, Pablo," he said with excitement. Pablo looked at the boy's outstretched hand with doubt. No one usually greeted him. A smile or a friendly gesture was rare for him. The other children tried to avoid him, calling him dirty and smelly. But Manuel didn't seem to care what clothes he wore or how he smelled. After a moment of confusion, Pablo extended his hand, accepting Manuel's greeting. Feeling the handshake, Manuel felt a strange sense of familiarity, as if this boy was part of his life in some inexplicable way. "Where do you live?" Manuel asked, eager to know more. Pablo opened his mouth to answer, but before he could, a woman's voice, commanding and concerned, rang out from the street. "Manuel, where are you?" It was Adriana, the boy's mother. The little millionaire smiled excitedly. "Come on, Pablo. My mother must see you. She'll be surprised when she sees how much alike we are," he said, turning to call Pablo. But when he heard footsteps approaching, the homeless boy panicked. Without thinking, he turned around and ran down the street. "Wait, don't go!" Manuel shouted and took a few steps. But it was too late. Pablo had disappeared into the alleys. The next moment, Adriana approached. Her face was filled with worry. She found her son on the sidewalk. He was looking in the direction Pablo had disappeared. "Oh my God, Manuel, I've been looking for you everywhere," she said, barely catching her breath. Manuel turned around. His heart was still beating fast. "I just went out for some air, Mom," he replied, trying to explain. "You know I don't like it when you go out alone," Adriana said, adjusting her son's clothes. "I didn't go out alone. I was just sitting here on the sidewalk," her son assured her. Adriana took a deep breath and gave in. "Okay, but let's go inside. It's time to cut the cake and sing happy birthday. Your father's waiting for you." Manuel winced. "Do I really have to go?" he asked with displeasure. "Of course, honey, it's your father's birthday," Adriana replied, trying to smile. The truth was that Manuel, despite his young age, no longer had warm feelings for his father. There was an invisible wall between them, built on mistrust and disappointment. Still, not wanting to upset his mother, the boy followed her back to the party hall. But before entering, he stole a glance outside, looking for any sign of Pablo. As they walked, Adriana commented, "There was someone else there. I thought I heard you talking to someone before I found you." Manuel opened his mouth to tell them about this unusual encounter, but he was interrupted. "Hey, where have you been?" "Everyone's waiting for you," said Alfonso, Manuel's father, appearing before them with a furrowed brow. The boy simply hung his head, swallowing the urge to tell them what had happened. And so the party continued. Forced smiles, automatic applause, flashes of cameras. Manuel participated in everything mechanically, but his thoughts were far away, returning to that magical moment when he met Pablo, that boy so similar and at the same time so different from him. Later back at the mansion, Manuel walked along the luxurious corridors to his room. The setting was every kid's dream. Portable video games, toys scattered everywhere. He fell onto the soft bed, hugging the pillow and staring thoughtfully at the ceiling. The image of Pablo wouldn't leave his mind. How could there be someone like him? Where did he live? Why were his clothes dirty and torn? What had happened to him that he ended up in such a state? Meanwhile, miles away, Pablo was curled up on pieces of cardboard on the cold sidewalk of an alley. His eyes were looking up at the starry sky, but his thoughts were spinning around that strange encounter. How could there be another like him, a boy who had everything and yet had nothing? And without even knowing it, both boys shared the same thought from that day on. Would they ever see each other again? Night had fallen, covering every street, every house, and every soul with a dark, silent, and cold blanket. In the luxurious mansion where Manuel lived with his parents, the silence was broken only by the restless sighs of Adriana, who tossed and turned in bed. Dreams tangled her thoughts like threads tangling around her legs as she fought a nightmare that was becoming more real with each passing second. Lying next to her husband, the businesswoman could hardly contain her anxious groans. Her usually calm face now expressed despair. Alfonso, irritated by his wife's constant movements, opened his eyes and sighed impatiently. Without much delicacy, he turned and shook her by the shoulders. "Wake up, Adriana," he said irritably. The woman opened her eyes abruptly, breathing heavily. She sat up in bed, clutching her hands to her chest where her heart was pounding. "No, don't take my son," she cried, her voice full of terror, breaking out of a nightmare. Alfonso leaned forward and took her hands, trying to bring her back to reality. "Calm down, my dear. Calm down. Manuel is fine. He is sleeping peacefully in his room," he said, trying to sound confident. Adriana's eyes searched desperately for something that would confirm reality. She recognized the room lit by the soft light of the lamp, felt her husband's touch, heard the distant sound of the clock on the wall. Then she whispered, "It was only a dream." Alfonso, accustomed to such crises, leaned back against the headboard and watched her, knowing that the nightmare was not new. He waited patiently as she ran her hands over her face, trying to push away the fear that had gripped her in her sleep. "The same dream again?" he asked, his tone a mixture of weariness and resignation. Adriana nodded and haltingly began to tell her husband the dream. "I was in the hospital, about to give birth. My belly was so big, Alfonso, it felt like it was about to explode. I came to give birth to the first child. I held him in my arms. I felt his warmth. He was our Manuel, our prince. But I knew there was another," she said, her eyes filling with tears. She closed her eyes for a moment, trying to hold back the tears that insisted on falling. "But when the second one was born," she continued, her voice shaking, "he was taken away. I couldn't even see him. I couldn't touch him. I just saw him being taken away." Adriana's heart was breaking again, as if she was reliving the pain. Alfonso sighed, trying to remain calm. "You need to see a psychiatrist, Adriana. This is not normal. You need professional help to get these dreams out of your head. It's always the same dream. My love, we only had one child. You were only pregnant with Manuel. There were no twins," her husband said, trying to sound understanding. Adriana, however, did not respond right away. Her absent gaze slid around the room as her mind wandered into the past. She remembered the pregnancy well, the unusually large belly at only 6 months, the constant visits to the obstetrician, as she told Alfonso with the hope that she could feel two hearts beating inside her. "I was so sure," she whispered, her voice shaking. "I was so sure there were two. It wasn't just a feeling. It was like I already knew them before they were born." She found herself back in the doctor's office, listening to the sonographer tell her there was only one baby. She felt disappointment, but also disbelief. Up until the day of her delivery, She had expected 2 cries, 2 babies in her arms. But only Manuel was born. Alfonso's touch brought her back to the present. Honey, let's leave it at that. You'll find a specialist tomorrow. I'll come with you if you want, he said, trying to end the conversation. Adriana nodded slightly. Alfonso turned off the lamp and lay down again, falling asleep a few minutes later. But Adriana remained awake, staring at the dark ceiling. Why did these dreams not disappear? Why did this pain, this emptiness not leave her? With eyes burning with fatigue, she promised herself that at dawn she would try to leave the past behind once and for all, and care only for Manuel, her son in the great love, the only one she had left. The next morning the sun rose, filling the room with a soft golden light. Tired but determined, Adriana got up, dressed with her usual elegance, and kissed her sleeping husband on the forehead before going down to breakfast. When they were all sitting at the table, she said, "I'm taking Manuel to school and then to work. Will you come with me?" the woman asked, adjusting her purse as Manuel finished his breakfast at the table. Alfonso, already dressed in casual clothes, smiled, although the smile did not reach his eyes. "I'll be there a little later, dear. First, I have to go see my sister." Hearing this, Manuel immediately frowned. A quick and reserved gesture on his face betrayed his displeasure. The busy Adriana did not notice, but Alfonso did and pretended not to notice. A few minutes later, mother and son drove away. As soon as the sound of the car disappeared, Alfonso dropped his mask of calm. His face acquired a grim and hard expression. He grabbed the phone with trembling hands, dialed the familiar number, and when someone answered, his voice was low and tense. "Adriana has been having more and more dreams about the twins. I'm afraid she might find out what happened on Manuel's birthday. She can't find out what happened. Never." He paused and looked around as if he was afraid someone might overhear him, even though he was alone. "I'm on my way there. We need to talk. I need your help to get this story out of her head before it's too late." Without waiting for an answer, he abruptly hung up. Alfonso quickly grabbed his car keys and walked out the front door, his heart pounding and his mind racing. The secret he had tried so hard to bury seemed to be slowly rising from the depths. If he were to surface, everything he had achieved would be completely destroyed. A few hours later, at Manuel's school, while the intense teaching process was going on, the little millionaire was in a distant state, lost in his thoughts. His empty gaze was fixed on the board, but his mind was very far away. The teacher, noticing his distraction, gently got his attention. "Manuel, are you okay? You seem distracted today," she said, approaching the student. The boy quickly looked up and replied, "Sorry, I really didn't sleep well last night," he told the woman, forcing a smile. The teacher, knowing the boy well as one of the best students in the school, simply nodded, deciding to ignore this lack of attention. Manuel tried to focus on the lesson again, but it was no use. The image of yesterday kept coming back to him. That boy's face, all dirty but just like his, wouldn't leave his mind. How could someone look so much like him? When the bell rang for recess, the little millionaire jumped up, almost knocking his classmates down. He was heading to the yard when Mariana, his classmate and best friend, ran after him. "Manuel, wait a minute," she cried out of breath. The boy stopped and turned to look at his friend. Mariana looked at him with a worried expression. "What happened? You're acting strange today. You haven't even really talked to me. Is it because of your father? Because of what he did?" the girl asked quietly. Manuel looked around, making sure no one was listening. He took his friend by the hand and led her to a corner of the yard. "It's not about my father," he said, looking at the floor. "It's something else. Something that happened yesterday. Something strange, Marie. It was very strange." Mariana's eyes lit up with curiosity. "What? Tell me?" she asked, almost pleading. Manuel took a deep breath and said, "I saw a boy who looked exactly like me." Mariana frowned. "Like a doppelganger? That's normal. My mother says that everyone has several doppelgangers in the world. People who look like us," the girl said, trying to understand. "No, Mariana, you don't understand. He wasn't similar. He was the same. The same height, the same eyes, the same hair. Even the voice like me," the boy explained. The girl's eyes widened in surprise. "But he was all dirty. It looked like he lived on the streets. Although I don't know if he actually lived on the streets, but his clothes were torn. He was like me. but it was like he lived a completely different life. Like in a parallel world, you know, Manuel said, still shocked. His friend crossed her arms over her chest and tilted her head thoughtfully. Are you sure? Just like him. Yes, of course. He was just like me. And what did you do? Mariana asked curiously. Manuel told her how he found the boy in front of the banquet hall, how they tried to talk, and how Pablo, scared by Adriana's voice, ran away before they could have a proper conversation. Wait, Mariana exclaimed, collecting everything in her head. So you're telling me that you might have a twin brother who lives on the street? Manuel scratched his head, confused. I don't know. My mother always said that I was an only child, but this is all very strange. I swear, he was just like me. Manuel, Mariana admitted. Her friend crossed her arms over her chest, full of determination. You have to find that boy again, Manuel. Find out who he is, Mariana said firmly. Manuel sighed. I'm amazed, but how? I don't even know where he lives. I only know his name. Pablo. Mariana smiled. Her mind was already working. Why don't you go back to where you found him? He might be there again. If he doesn't have a home, he might be looking for shelter nearby. And even if he's just a child who got dirty, he might live nearby, she suggested, excited to know more. Manuel thought for a moment. That's a good idea, Mari. But how do I go back there? My parents would never let me go looking for some stranger, even a child, Manuel Chick said anxiously. He also admitted that he had thought about telling his mother about Pablo, but had changed his mind, fearing that he would not be taken seriously. Mariana's smile widened. I'll take care of it. Here's what you do. Ask your mother if you can spend the evening at my house. Then we'll make up an excuse and my driver will take us. The world does everything I ask, she laughed cheerfully. Manuel felt hope rising in him again. He extended his hand to his girlfriend and smiled. Deal. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, Pablo's reality was completely different. A boy with a growling stomach from hunger was digging through garbage cans looking for food. He checked one, then another, and another. All were empty or had food left over that was inedible. With a sad sigh, Pablo sat down on the sidewalk, hugging his knees to protect himself from the morning chill. His thoughts returned to the day before. He remembered the garbage cans outside the banquet hall. They were probably full of good food thrown into the trash. He also thought about a boy like himself, Manuel. I should have looked for food yesterday, he muttered regretfully. He remembered well the woman's voice that had made him run away. From a young age, he had learned to be afraid of adults. He knew that for children like him, being taken to an orphanage was worse than living on the streets. In an orphanage, he would lose his freedom and could be subjected to abuse, as had happened before. Pablo thought for a moment, thinking about this unusual meeting. Then an idea appeared in his tired head. What if I go back there? Maybe there is still food in the containers near the hall. And maybe I will meet Manuel again, he said to himself with a spark of hope. Getting up from the ground, Pablo gathered his courage and decided that he would go back to the street near the banquet hall. Something inside him told him that this meeting was not just a coincidence. Something was bound to happen. Meanwhile, at Manuel's school, the little millionaire anxiously looked at the clock hanging on the classroom wall. Every second seemed to drag on endlessly. He mentally counted down to noon, the moment when the lesson would end and the mission he had planned with Mariana would begin. The hand finally reached 12, and as soon as the bell rang, Manuel looked at his friend, exchanging a conspiratorial smile with her. They both quickly stood up and headed for the door together. Before leaving, the boy ran up to the teacher. I promise I'll be more attentive tomorrow, maestro, he said with a shy smile. The teacher smiled back and nodded understandingly. From the entrance to the school, Mariana saw the black car of Edmund, her personal driver, and quickly ran up to him. Wait a minute, Edmund. Manuel is going to my house today. He just needs to tell his mother, the girl said excitedly. The driver, used to Mariana's unusual requests, smiled and nodded. The girl ran to Manuel, who was waiting for his mother to appear. However, it was not she who appeared, but Alfonso, the boy's father, accompanied by his sister Mercedes. Manuel immediately frowned when he saw them. Something inside him always began to stir anxiously when he saw Alfonso, and especially when Mercedes was nearby. With a forced smile, Mercedes leaned over and hugged Manuel tightly. Handsome nephew, I missed you so much, my dear. Today I came for you. Do you like it? she said in a sweet voice. Manuel remained tense in her embrace and did not respond. Alfonso was direct and abrupt. "Get in the car, Manuel. I'm in a hurry," he ordered in a firm voice. The boy took a deep breath, trying to remain calm. "I'm not going," he answered boldly, confronting his father. Alfonso's expression became even harder. He crossed his arms over his chest and raised his voice. "What do you mean you're not going? Your mother is in an important meeting, and I came to pick you up. Come on, get in the car." Realizing that the situation could get out of hand and jeopardize their plan, Mariana quickly intervened. "That's not it, Señor Alfonso," she said, smiling politely. "Manuel just wanted to tell you that he will have lunch at my house today. We need to do our schoolwork together." The boy quickly added, "Precisely, Dad. Please." Alfonso looked at the girl with disdain, clearly suspicious. He glanced at his son and said, "I don't know. Your mother asked me to take you straight home." He paused and crossed his arms. "And one more thing. I don't like your friendship with that girl. You need to make friends with boys, play soccer, do manly things." "Manuel, you're always at Mariana's house." Manuel looked down, embarrassed. Before he could respond, Mercedes put her hand on Alfonso's shoulder and spoke with a tight smile. "Stop being rude, Alfonso. Goodbye." "What's wrong with that? Besides, they're about to do their homework. Let him go." Adriana values Manuel's studies more than anything else. Alfonso snorted, defeated. "Okay," he said reluctantly. "What time should I pick you up, Manuel?" Mariana, quick as ever, answered before Manuel could open his mouth. "Don't worry. As soon as we finish work, Edmund will take Manuel home." Alfonso nodded slowly, still reluctant. He leaned over to hug his son, but Manuel only gave him a quick, half-hearted hug. He then ran to Edmund's car, where Mariana was already waiting. From a distance, Alfonso watched with disapproval as they both got into the car. "I don't like this friendship, Mercedes. When I was his age, all I wanted to do was play football with the boys," he commented, shaking his head. Mercedes burst out laughing and said, "Oh, Alfonso, come on. Do you care what the kid does? I'm sure they'll date one day. And look at it this way, Mariana is also the daughter of millionaires. You should be grateful. It would be worse if he were chasing some poor girl." She winked mischievously at him. "Forget about it. Let's focus on what's really important. Adriana, I'll talk to her and get this whole twin thing out of her head once and for all. After all, I'm a good girl, right?" she said, laughing. Alfonso came over and said, "Better." They got into the car, and before they drove away, Alfonso said with a mischievous smile, "Since I'm not taking Manuel home, we can have some fun together." Mercedes leaned towards him, and with a seductive look replied, "Of course, my love." They kissed, making it clear that their brotherly, sisterly bond was just a facade. Meanwhile, in Edmund's car, Mariana and Manuel exchanged worried glances. The driver was following the usual route until Mariana leaned forward and said, "Edmund, can you change the route? Please take us to the big banquet hall in the next neighborhood." The driver looked in the rear-view mirror, confused. "Your parents ordered me to take you home, Mariana. Besides, you're with a friend." The girl smiled in her own convincing way. "Edmund, I just wanted to stop by the hall to find out when my birthday is. My parents have been really busy lately, and I really wanted to have the party there. You have no idea how popular this place is." Manuel looked at her with admiration, impressed by his friend's intelligence. Edmund sighed, stunned by the girl's charm. "Okay, but no nonsense. If I lose my job, it will be your fault," he said, pretending to be angry. Mariana laughed and replied, "The best driver in the world." Manuel smiled with relief. But before we continue and find out if Manuel will meet Pablo again and what their real relationship is, help our channel by giving it a like and say, "Would you like to have a twin brother? And if you did, would you switch places with him to prank someone?" Write from which city you are watching this video. I will leave a heart in your comment. And now, back to our story. Adriana was in her office, busy with a bunch of papers and documents. She was fully focused on planning her week, organizing meetings, evaluating proposals, and preparing the launch of new products for her cosmetics company. As she was leafing through the files, she heard a light knock on the door. "Come in," she said, without taking her eyes off the paperwork. The door opened and Alfonso appeared, a carefree smile on his face. Adriana immediately stood up, her expression softening a little when she saw him. "Hello, love," she said, walking up to him. "Have you picked up Manuel yet? Have you taken him home?" Alfonso smiled and replied, "Manuel went to see his friend Mariana. He said they had homework to do. They'll take him home later." Adriana frowned in surprise. "That's weird. I don't remember him saying anything about homework," she said thoughtfully, then shook her head and smiled. "But okay, I like Mariana and her family." At that point, Adriana's husband quickly changed the subject. "I brought you a surprise," he said excitedly. "A surprise?" Adriana asked curiously. Before she could think about the possibilities, Mercedes walked through the door, smiling brightly. "Surprise," she said, opening her arms. "Hello, sweetheart. How great to see you." Adriana walked over and gave her a warm hug, unaware that Mercedes was not Alphonse's sister, but his mistress. "It's great to see you, Mercedes," Adriana said sincerely. Mercedes smiled and wasted no time in speaking. "Alfonso told me you've been having some problems. Weird dreams, right?" Adriana sighed and nodded. "That's why I'm here," Mercedes said enthusiastically. "You work too much, slut, and it's taking a toll on your psyche. Today, you're going to take the day off. We're going to go for a walk, relax, and enjoy life. And to top it off, I've scheduled a therapy session with a wonderful professional. Will you enjoy it?" Adriana hesitated, looking at her desk piled high with paperwork. "I don't know. I have so much work to do." Alfonso came over and encouraged her. "Forget about it today, love. I'll take care of everything. You deserve a day for yourself." Amid sighs and smiles, Adriana gave in. Soon she left with Mercedes, trying to relax as she whispered softly and gently, yet manipulatively, in her ear, trying to finally push away any unpleasant memories of her past pregnancy with twins. Meanwhile, Manuel and Mariana went in search of Pablo, a boy who resembled the rich Manuel. Edmund stopped the car in front of a large banquet hall. The children quickly got out of the car, looking around warily, searching for Pablo in every corner. But the street was deserted. No sign of the boy. Manuel crossed his arms and muttered, "I thought so. I don't think he'll come back." Mariana, trying to keep her spirits up, smiled and said, "Calm down, Manuel. Let's try to buy some time. I'll go in and pretend to want to know when my birthday is." She entered the room and Manuel remained outside, carefully observing any movements. Mariana spent a few minutes inquiring about the dates and pretending to be interested in the banquet hall. Outside, Manuel sighed, looking around for the boy. Time passed and Pablo did not appear. Then the girl left the room, seeing the despondency on her friend's face. "Let's keep trying. We will find him one day," she said decisively, wanting to help her friend. They walked back to the car. Edmund, already nervous, commented, "Are you staying there for long?" "Yes," Mariana smiled and replied, "The hall is so beautiful that I did not want to leave. My party will be like a fairy tale, Edmund." The driver laughed and started the car. He began to drive slowly along the quiet street. Manuel, leaning his head on the glass, upset. His gaze slid almost automatically along the sidewalks without hope, and then he saw him. "There he is," Manuel exclaimed, pointing to the street where the boy was rummaging through a trash can. Mariana's eyes widened. "Edmund, stop the car," she screamed. The driver braked sharply, startled. "What happened?" he asked anxiously. "I forgot to ask you something about my party," Mariana improvised, already opening the door and Manuel behind her. Edmund watched in amazement as they ran along the sidewalk, but did not have time to stop them. From the car, he watched with a frown as they did not go into the hall, but headed toward the dirty boy rummaging through the trash. Manuel went up to Pablo and touched his shoulder. "Pablo," he called hopefully. The boy turned, startled. For a moment, his eyes reflected fear. But when he recognized Manuel, a spontaneous smile appeared on his face. Mariana, seeing them next to each other, covered her mouth in shock. "Oh my God, you two are like two peas in a pod," she whispered. Manuel, trying to calm Pavel down, said, "You don't have to be afraid. Mariana is my friend. You can trust her." Then the millionaire boy took a deep breath and asked, "Why did you run away yesterday?" Pablo answered sheepishly, "I don't like adults. Every time they come to me, they try to take me to some shelter." Manuel nodded, understanding. He didn't want to scare him. "Where do you live?" the boy asked. Pablo shrugged. "On the street." These words shocked the young millionaire. Mariana, still in shock, asked quietly, You don't have parents. Pablo looked down sadly. I was found in a dumpster when I was a baby. Homeless people raised me, but they died. Since then, I've been alone. Manuel's heart sank. He looked at Pablo and felt a connection that went much deeper than the physical level. Something was stronger there. They sat on the sidewalk away from the noise, trying to find some peace in the midst of their raging emotions. Pablo, his gaze downcast and his voice breaking, began to tell his story, talking about the cold nights, about how he had to protect himself from the rain with nothing but pieces of cardboard. He told me about the days when he had nothing to eat, the times he hid to avoid being taken away by force to orphanages where he knew he would suffer even more. Manuel and Mariana, who came from completely different worlds, listened in silence with a heavy heart, a big one. They knew that there were people who were going through hard times, but to see a child suffering so much right in front of them was heartbreaking. With tears in his eyes, Manuel extended his hand and said, "You're not alone now, Pablo. We'll help you." Mariana, excited, quickly stood up and said, "Yes, come with us. We'll fix everything." Pablo smiled slightly, but the sad look remained. He knew that these two were just good kids, but they couldn't change what adults decided. He sighed and said, "They can't do anything. My life is here and everything is fine. I've gotten used to it." Silence fell over them, broken only by the distant sounds of the city. Mariana, feeling the need to do something, went over to try to comfort him. And then, through the hole in Pablo's torn shirt, she saw something that froze her in place. "What are you doing?" Pablo asked, frightened, as Mariana gently tugged at his shirt. Mariana pointed, her voice shaking with excitement. "Look, you have a birthmark exactly like Manuel's." Manuel came over, examining him carefully. Yes, I have a birthmark in exactly the same place." "Look," the surprised boy said, also lifting his shirt. Mariana looked at them both, her eyes shining with disbelief. "It can't be. This can't be a coincidence. You two are twins. There is no other explanation." Pablo's eyes widened in confusion. "Twins? What are you talking about?" Manuel took a deep breath and explained. "We were talking before class today. We thought the only way we could look alike was if we were twins. And now this birthmark." "But how? How can he be my brother?" Mariana added. "It's all very strange, because Adriana always said she only had one son, but this birthmark is too much of a coincidence." The homeless boy grabbed his head, trying to make sense of it all. "It can't be. We just look alike. That's all." "We all have birthmarks," Pablo whispered. His heart was pounding. The thought of having a family, of not being alone, was too tempting, but also too painful. What if this was just an empty hope? At that moment, quick footsteps were heard on the sidewalk. They turned to see Edmund, the driver, standing there, with a shocked expression on his face. Instinctively, Pablo backed away, ready to run, at the sight of an adult. "Calm down, Pablo," Manuel said, taking his hand. "Let me go. He's going to take me to the shelter," Pablo shouted. There was obvious fear in his voice. Mariana came over and quickly said, "Edmund is good. He won't hurt you, I swear." Manuel confirmed this, trying to instill confidence. "Not all adults are bad, Pablo. Trust us." Edmund, still processing what he had just seen, slowly approached and asked, "What's going on here? My God, who is this boy? Why does he look so much like your friend?" Mariana, Manuel, and Mariana herself took turns telling the story. The meeting, the resemblance, the discovery of the birthmark. The driver looked at Pablo, then at Manuel, comparing every feature, every detail. Then he said, "They are twins. I have no doubt. But how is that possible? I know Mrs. Adriana. She always said she only had one son. How could this happen?" Before they could talk any further, Pablo's stomach rumbled, breaking the tense atmosphere. The boy hung his head, embarrassed. Edmund smiled, understanding the situation. "The answers can wait. Let's feed this tummy first." He drove everyone back to the car and took them to a small cafe nearby. He bought sandwiches and drinks for everyone. When Pablo received his food, he ate with such greed that he touched everyone. His eyes sparkled with every bite. As if discovering the taste of life, Manuel and Mariana watched in silence with heavy hearts, feeling a mixture of sadness and hope. After the meal, sitting at a separate table, Mariana asked, "What are we going to do now?" Manuel looked at Pablo and then at Edmund. "Now we're going to take Pablo to meet my mother. She needs to see him. Only she can confirm if he is my twin brother." Pablo swallowed hard. His eyes reflected fear. What if, what if they take me to an orphanage? They don't know what his life is like? He asked with a trembling voice. Edmund leaned forward and said firmly, "Can you trust me, boy? Donna Adriana is a good person. She would never do something like that." Pablo looked at Manuel, Mariana, and Edmund. There was sincerity in their eyes, a sincerity he hadn't seen in a long time. With a quickening heart, he finally nodded. "Okay, I'll come with you." Edmund smiled with relief. "Then let's go." The four of them got into the car. Pablo squirmed a little in his seat, used to the freedom of the streets, but at the same time feeling a strange sense of security. Manuel sat down next to him and gave him a reassuring smile. Mariana talked for a while about how everything would be okay and how they would all be having fun at school together soon. Edmund started the car and drove to Adriana's mansion. Along the way, everyone's hearts were beating fast, each lost in their own thoughts. What would happen when they got there? How would the meeting go? Was Pablo really Manuel's twin brother, or was it all just a big, painful coincidence? The wind blew through the windows, as if it wanted to be part of the story that was about to change everyone's lives forever. Meanwhile, Adriana, after a long day in the city with Mercedes, had finally returned home. She sighed with relief as she crossed the mansion's garden and said, smiling, "You were right, Mercedes. I really needed this free evening to get these crazy thoughts out of my head." Mercedes, the sister with that cynical smile she wore so well, replied, "Now you need to focus on yourself and your only son, Manuel, the only one you carried in your womb." Adriana nodded slightly. "Speaking of him, he should be here soon." Without finishing her sentence, Mercedes looked out the window of the mansion and saw Edmund's car pull into the garage. "My handsome nephew, look at him driving," Adriana's sister said, trying to sound enthusiastic. Outside, Edmund parked the car. Mariana turned to Manuel and gave him one last instruction. "Tell your mother that you have a new friend for her to meet. Then bring her here." Manuel nodded, his heart pounding. In the car, Pablo was shaking. Mariana took his hand tightly. "Everything will be fine," she said, smiling comfortingly. Manuel ran out of the car, excited, passing Mercedes as if she were invisible. He immediately ran to his mother and hugged her tightly. "Hello, my love," Adriana said, hugging her son. She stepped back a little and asked, "Where is Mariana? She didn't want to come in." Manuel shook his head excitedly. "She's outside with a new friend. You'll really like meeting him." Adriana frowned. "A new friend?" Before she could ask any more questions, Manuel grabbed her hand and led her outside. "Come on, Mom, you have to see him." Mercedes, curious and with a strange feeling of discomfort in her chest, followed them. At that very moment, Alfonso's car also drove into the garden of the mansion. Alfonso got out of the car with a confident step, frowning at the movement. He was still adjusting his suit when he saw Mariana open the car door and Pablo get out. Alfonso stopped when he saw the boy. His face immediately turned pale. He froze, unable to hide his surprise. Full of enthusiasm, Manuel pointed at Pablo and said, "Mom, look, he looks just like me." Mercedes covered her mouth with her hand, not knowing what to do. Adriana felt her heart beat faster. Her eyes fixed on Pablo. Without saying a word, she began to walk towards the boy. Each step felt like a ton. She stared at his dirty little face, at his blue eyes, the same as hers and Manuel's. When she finally reached him, she slowly knelt down in front of the boy, raised a trembling hand to his face, and feeling his touch, her eyes filled with tears. Pablo felt his eyes fill with tears too. Without thinking, Adriana hugged him tightly to her chest, feeling the baby's small, rapidly beating heart. "I knew it," she whispered, her voice shaking. At that moment, memories flooded her mind. When she was pregnant and newly married to Alfonso, Adriana clearly remembered the feeling of two beings inside her. She ran her hand over her belly and said, "My dear, there are two, I'm sure." With that rehearsed smile, her husband replied, "We'll find out tomorrow." She smiled hopefully. "Tomorrow is the ultrasound. You have no idea how much I want to see our princes or princesses, my dear. They talked for a while, and Adriana, full of dreams, asked, when are you finally going to show me your company? We're already married and you always find an excuse. If you didn't take me on so many trips into expensive restaurants, I'd say you're lying. She laughed jokingly, sure that her husband was the most real man she knew. Alfonso changed the subject and said, soon, my love. My life is hectic, but I promise to show you everything. She believed every word, unsuspectingly kissed her husband on the cheek and went to work. As soon as Adriana left the house, Alfonso took the car keys and headed to the simple apartment where Mercedes was waiting for him. As he entered, he paced back and forth, running his hands over his head. I'm starting to get nervous. What if she finds out everything? Mercedes, lying on the couch, said with a disdainful smile, she will find out about Alfonso sooner or later, and not 2 children will save you. You screwed up this time. In fact, you spent all our money trying to impress Adriana. What if she finds out? We'll have nothing left. What a disaster. Alfonso stopped and looked at her. I'll fix it. I'll take it on. I know I can. The man was an experienced con man. His entire life had been built on deception. His marriage to Adriana had been his most ambitious achievement. He had posed as a big businessman, using dirty money from other scams to maintain the fiction. And now, under mounting pressure, he needed an even more daring plan to keep from losing everything. And it was at that moment that the most perverted idea of all was born in his head: to sell one of the babies. If there are 2, he thought out loud, why not sell one? If the children were like their mother, they would be blonde and blue-eyed, the children desired by the many millions of families desperate for an heir. Mercedes jumped up, frightened. Are you crazy, Alfonso? Are you going to judge your own child? What's wrong with you, man? Alfonso, with a cold glint in his eyes, replied, if it helps preserve this life and guarantee our future, then I will. You know, I never needed children. Mercedes, my only love is you. At the gates of the huge mansion, years later, Alfonso watched the scene of Adriana hugging Pablo, knowing that her past was about to come to light. Adriana, still completely excited, could not stop hugging Pavel. It seemed that by touching him, she could finally fill the emptiness that she had carried in her heart for many years. With each passing second, the invisible bond between them became stronger, growing in a way that words could not describe. My son, she repeated, caressing Pablo's dirty face, feeling that she did not want to let him go ever again, as if the fear of losing him was once again taking over her soul. Pablo looked at Adriana with tears in his eyes and asked in a broken voice, am I really your son? Before the millionairess could answer, Alfonso hurried up to them, clearly worried. What are you doing, Adriana? He asked, trying to sound calm, but the tension in his voice was obvious. She turned to him, still kneeling next to Pablo, and said, Alfon, look at him. Look. This is our son. This is the child I always knew I was carrying in my womb. Look how much he looks like Manuel. Manuel, excited, came over and stood next to his mother and Pablo. The 2 boys standing next to each other were exactly alike, like mirror images of each other. Alfonso, pale, tried to maintain his composure. You are mistaken, my dear. This boy does not look like Manuel. They are completely different. Mercedes, who had been watching everything closely, almost stuttering, supported Alfonso. That's right, Adriana. You're going crazy. Look more closely. They are very different. Alfonso insisted. You only had 1 child. I saw the ultrasound and I remember it perfectly. 1 child, only 1. Mercedes took a step forward, trying to influence Adriana's mind. Think about everything we discussed today. Cleverly, you yourself said that you succumbed to absurd thoughts. This boy is not your son. He is a homeless child. He is blonde, like Manuel. But that's all. Alfonso, seeing that soft words were not working, tried to use more decisive measures. He took a step forward, trying to take Pavel from Adriana's arms. Leave this child alone. He is not our son. He belongs on the street. He's all dirty. How can such a child be our son? But Adriana hugged Pavel even tighter, protecting him like a lioness protects her cub. No, she screamed, tears rolling down her face. This is my son. I don't know how, but he's mine. I've always felt like I was missing something, and now I know. Manuel, his eyes shining and excited, came up to her and said, Mom, look at the birthmark. We have the same birthmark. We look alike. Adriana, still hugging Pavel, looked at the birthmark on her stomach, feeling a mixture of happiness and confusion. But how is this possible? She asked almost to herself. Alfonso lost control again, and his voice sounded harsh. This child is disgusting. He's not our son. Then Manuel turned boldly to his father. And you are disgusting for kissing Mercedes without telling Mama. Adriana remained motionless. Manuel's words echoed in her head. She looked at Alfonso in bewilderment, then at Mercedes. What do you mean, Manuel? What are you talking about, son? She asked in a broken voice. Furious, Alfonso pointed a finger at his son. Shut up, you bastard. Respect me, I am your father. But Manuel did not give in to intimidation. In a firm voice, he continued. I saw, Mama, I saw them kissing, and then Papa threatened me never to speak of it. So I began to distance myself from him. Adriana covered her mouth with her hand, feeling the world crumble around her. Mercedes tried to intervene, stammering, This is absurd. I am Alfonso's sister. But the clever Mariana did not hesitate to join the conversation. Lies. Manuel and I checked. Even their last names are different. We even took pictures of their IDs. They think they are smart, but we are much smarter. Adriana was astonished. I have never seen their IDs, she muttered under her breath. Manuel turned to Mercedes and said mockingly, Then show your ID to my mother, if you really are my father's sister. Mercedes was in a hopeless situation. Alfonso tried to come up with an excuse, but Mercedes, in desperation, declared loudly, echoing through the walls of the mansion, Okay, I'll tell you everything, she shouted, but only if you give me a good sum of money, Adriana. I'll tell you everything you need to know, even who that child you're hugging is. Give me the money, I'll tell you everything, and then disappear. Alfonso got angry and shouted back at her, Shut up, idiot. Mercedes is panicking now, she screamed. You're an idiot, Alfonso. It's all your fault. If you hadn't had the terrible idea of selling your own son, none of this would have happened. The silence hit them like a bomb. Adriana remained motionless, feeling the blood run cold in her veins. It seemed as if her heart had stopped for a moment. Sell your own son, she repeated in shock. Each word weighed more heavily than the last. Alfonso looked at Mercedes, then at Adriana. His eyes were full of hatred, like a cornered animal. Adriana stood up slowly, still hugging Pavel. Then she walked towards Alfonso. Every step was full of pain, anger, and intense disappointment. What have you done, Alfonso? How could you sell our son? She asked with a broken voice, feeling how all the love she once had for him was now completely destroyed in front of this cruel truth. Cornered, the man knew that he could no longer hide the truth. And at that moment, the perfect life he had tried to build began to fall apart before his eyes. He tried to deny it, mumbling incoherent words, but then Adriana only wanted the truth. Without hesitation, the woman took off the diamond necklace from her neck, which was worth a fortune, and handed it to Mercedes. Tell me everything, and if you tell the truth, you will get much more, she said with a firm voice, looking Mercedes in the eyes. Alfonso, realizing what was about to happen, tried to throw himself at the false sister to stop her from speaking. But Edmund was faster. He leaped at Alfonso and held him tightly. Adriana glared at Mercedes and commanded, Tell the truth now. Mercedes, torn between greed and fear, looked at Alfonso, who was struggling unsuccessfully under Edmund's weight, and sighed. Forgive me, love, she said with false sweetness, but you know how I love diamonds. Then the snake began to reveal the whole dark plot, how Alfonso had deceived her from the very beginning, posing as a great businessman. Then she explained how she had arranged for a corrupt doctor to lie during an ultrasound and say that Adriana only had one child. He took you to a hospital involved in a dirty baby-selling scheme to give birth, Mercedes revealed. You were put to sleep, and when you woke up, you believed you only had one child. Tears streamed freely down Adriana's face. The pain of realizing that her suspicions and recurring dreams were real was devastating. How? How did he end up on the street? She asked, her voice breaking. Mercedes looked down. There was a police operation right after the sale. The panicked buyer left Pablo in a dumpster to avoid arrest. We thought he was dead, but it looks like the boy made it out on the street. Adriana felt the world crumbling around her. Her son, her baby, was thrown away like trash. The money from the sale, Mercedes continued. Alfonso used to create a fake company, deceiving you and infiltrating your business. At that moment, anger overwhelmed Adriana. She stood up and, with a cry of pain and rage, attacked Alfonso, hitting him with slaps and fists. "You shameless monster! You don't know who you're dealing with! You'll go to jail!" she screamed. Edmund carefully intervened and separated them. Mercedes, seeing the confusion, tried to negotiate. "Now that I've told you everything, I want more jewelry. You promised." "Well, is it a trick? How about diamonds? I know you have beautiful ones," she demanded with greed in her eyes. Adriana, breathing heavily, took her phone out of her pocket and showed it to everyone. "Everything is recorded, Snake. The whole confession. They will both go to jail. You will not get a penny of my money, not even this necklace." Mercedes was angry. "You lied to me. I told you everything. I deserve this." Adriana replied coldly, "The only thing you deserve is to rot in jail." At that moment, Mercedes tried to escape, rushing to the door, but before she could take 2 steps, sirens sounded in the yard. The police had arrived. Mariana, beaming with joy, picked up her phone and said, "I was the one who called the police." The officers quickly entered and handcuffed Alfonso and Mercedes. They were both taken away despite their useless protests. A few days later, during the trial, they were sentenced to many years in prison for all their crimes. Adriana, broken-hearted but determined, took a DNA test to obtain custody of Pablo. As expected, the test confirmed what her mother's heart already knew. Pablo was her son. Pablo had finally found the family he had dreamed of. He now had a loving mother, a brother, clean clothes, good food, and the sincere care of Mariana, the smartest friend he could ever dream of. Over time, the pain gave way to hope. Adriana found love again. This time with Edmund, a man who was always there in the most difficult moments, proving that true love is not based on appearance or social status, but on truth and sincerity. The new family lived happily, overcoming every obstacle with love and courage. And Adriana, like never before, proved to the world that a mother's heart is never wrong because she always knew that there was another child in the world. Leave a comment with a heart and write Manuel, Pavla, and Mariana to show you watched this video to the end. And like the story of the twins, I have another much more exciting story to share with you. Click on the video that appears on your screen and come with me into this new story. Hugs, and I'll see you there.